$341. Stormwater, $295,285. Landfill, $105,200. Cemetery, $291,158. Transfers to other funds, $1,050,000. Total proprietary expenditures, $3,275,155. Section 2. Authorizes the mayor except as provided in the Georgetown purchasing policy adopted in Municipal Order 11028 to enter into any contracts or agreements necessary to fulfill the operation of city government within the allocations listed in this ordinance. Section 3. Provides that if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held unconstitutional or otherwise invalid, such infirmity shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 4 provides that all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Publicly introduced and read for the first time July 1st, 2013.
Okay. Council like to discuss anything at this time or whatever? Otherwise, that's all the business we had scheduled for this evening.
Mayor, I wouldn't mind asking a question or two. We received the printout, I guess, with the budget recommendations, which was discussed at the last budget meeting. And I guess we've got a meeting tomorrow night as well.
6 o'clock tomorrow evening, second reading.
One question, I guess, for Andrew. Andrew, would it be appropriate to take some type of a vote tonight or go ahead and do some type of preliminary vote? Can you do that in this form of government?
Well, I mean, you can always take an informal straw poll, but you can't really take any vote that has any weight.
No.
Okay. Okay. Mayor, I guess I'll ask this question. Public Works took a pretty big hit, obviously, in what was being proposed. And one of the concerns I have deals with the salaries of the being cut, I guess, $166,000. And I know Terry I had a chance to talk to him, I guess, on Friday. And I don't want to answer for him, but probably the only way that he can endure this is if we go to the one man or one woman or whatever per truck. And are we prepared? I mean, that's to me, that seems like the commitment we're making. If we decide to cut $166,000 from this, it seems like we're making a commitment right now to Public Works that we're going to operate with one man per truck. And Terry, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that essentially what you're going to have to do in regards to sanitation? Did I say Public Works? And I guess you all obviously discussed it, 5 of you anyway. And is that kind of the commitment that you all are making, especially with our department head saying that that's pretty much what he's going to have to do?
I know one of the things that we looked at was the fact that the salary for that, based on the last 4 years, jumped. Was it? I forgot the percentage, like 30% this year. The department request from like 484, 447, 435 to 627. So my, one question raised was, wow, why did it jump? And I don't know if you wanted to answer that on behalf of City Hall and Terry and for all of us. That's one of the questions we had, because it was a huge jump. It's like, why did that budget jump 30%?
Well, obviously, at the time the question was asked, I didn't have the answer and didn't have the history at the time. When I walked into the meeting, Terry handed me a sheet that he has looked at, and basically what's happened is, the way that I arrived at the 627, as you all know, was I took the list of staff and plugged in the salaries, and of course you can see that within the budget workbook. But I couldn't answer the question of why was it so low over the last several years, including this current year. Terry, like I said, just provided me when I walked in because I was out today, has provided me a list that shows he had one position on military leave for the year. He estimates a savings of $41,600. Delayed hiring for 2 positions, one with a 4-month savings, one with a 10th month savings. The 2 vacant positions, which we did discuss, the sanitation worker driver and the crew leader that were discussed, that have both been vacant all year, $36,816, and then he shows the $5,200 raise, $5,200 savings there. I haven't added these numbers up, and then he has one position that's been on medical leave for 6 months. So he is come to me with a sheet that justifies why about, out of that 166 we cut, about 159 of it has been over at least the last year or so. Going back farther than that, I'm not sure, but basically he's had a position on military leave, didn't refill. Look when those positions have gone on leave.
So these positions been empty for a year?
Yeah, the military leave has been at least a year. I'm not sure the exact
For a
time,
year.
but like I said, this is just something Terry handed me as I arrived this evening, so that's the only reason I have a different answer than I apologize that I did last Wednesday.
But that's
Huh?
that's there's $192,000 difference between the current budget and the
There
department
was
request.
166 that we took out of salaries, and then we took a corresponding 33,000 out of, I think, retirement to go along with those salaries.
I'm speaking solely on salaries, the fact that there was a $192,000 difference between the current budget and the department request.
Like I said, he gave
Yeah.
this to me when I came in to justify, at least for this past year, some of those. I'm sure he'd be happy to get additional copies.
I did bring some additional copies.
Okay.
I want to pass those out.
It probably wouldn't
Please.
hurt to go ahead if you want to do that, so. Like
I think
said,
that,
I
you
did
know-
not have that answer on Wednesday, so I couldn't explain it.
And I think, to reiterate what Kelly has said, I think what we did was look from a traditional standpoint. 2011, we spent 484. 2012, we spent 447. We only budgeted 435.8 this year. And I think we're actually on pace to be lower than that.
You know, it was hard for me to justify the history of why. Like I said, all I did was take the list of positions that are filled, and at the time, there were 2 that were vacant, and
So
came up with the list of salaries.
there's 2 positions then that aren't gonna be funded with
Correct.
Public Works or sanitation,
Right now, the sanitation worker driver and a crew leader that have been vacant
okay?
And
this year.
if you annualize the pace at which they're going right now, they're only going to be at 420,473 annualized based off of this budget.
Um,
Terry, are you short?
I need one more sheet.
We can handle this
Yeah,
right here.
33.
Go ahead, yeah.
What that sheet really tells you is that the delta between your 166 and 159, that's really what you can apply as a shortfall. If you really want to cut some of the salaries, that's my calculation. I don't know how you came up with your 166, but basically, if you look at the young man that was on military leave for a full year, his salary, I believe I got that down at like 41,360.
41,607.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the 2 vacant positions, one of those positions was a basically promotion. When we said, okay, we're gonna make a team leader there, but it wasn't a new body. It was a person that we was just gonna give like $2.50 increase in pay. So you realize about $5,200 there. So if you look at those particular figures, you'll come up with 159. Also with the other position, we delayed our, position for 4 months, then another position, I believe, for 10 months. So basically, if you calculate those, you're gonna end up with $159,000. And that's the true savings that we came up with. Now, the military leave, young man, he's back. He'll be back to work next month. And, so we got him back. And the other positions that you want to really go ahead and cut, I think as Mark was telling you, if you want to go ahead and pull that 166 out, you're going to have to support the trash ordinance 100%. I mean, 100%. I would not have a body to put out there to pick up any overflow. It won't happen.
Well, that's what we've been talking about for, 8, 10, 12 years as far as the plan for it. I mean, this is my 5th year on council, and I've harped on it since I got on. Still, though, I can see the 159 figure you're giving us in savings, but there's a $191,000 difference between the current budget and the department request. And as Brad said, you know, you're whatever annualized, it's on to be more than that at 420 this year.
Yeah.
So that was a question that we raised. I mean, I don't know how you, $200,000 difference.
I guess I do have a question to follow up on that, Terry. With what you just gave us, it looks like you've actually got 3, 4, you've almost got, well, you've got over 50 months of total vacancies on this list. Would that be about right? You've got 1 year on medical leave, you've got 2 for the entire year, the sanitation and the team leader. Then we delayed in hiring for 14 months worth of employees. Then we had a 7-month medical leave on the employees. How did we still get everything done? If we have to have all of that manpower, how did we still get everything done? And how is it that this will put us into a position, and I'm not necessarily saying that we shouldn't enforce the ordinance on the trash pickup, but how does that, I mean, how did we cover that this past year?
We, excuse me, we do pull from the equipment operators and maintenance positions, so some work in those areas, you know, don't get done.
And there's professional services where you're using temps as well, and we talked about that last week as well. Because I think what you've asked for under professional services was maybe twice what you were on pace to use, and we assumed that was temporary employees. Is that accurate?
That is it. No, that's not correct. In sanitation and public works, we basically use professional account for CDL licenses and drug testing and those type of issues there.
So this $160,000 that you have on this list, we actually accommodated during the current, or well, now the past fiscal year by shifting people from public works then?
By shifting people from public works and there's been some times, you know, that we just, Brad just didn't get some things done, even though the city looks good out there and we concentrating on the bulky items that's sitting around and gonna make us look bad. But there's storm drain issues that's out there that need to be taken care of. This time of year here, now if it was during this particular time of year, you would not see this because there's multi-mowing responsibilities that we're trying to do as far as beautification of the city.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this is what you're showing us here is what we realized in savings during our 2012-2013 year budget.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't forced into a corner of having to enforce, again, not that I don't support that, but we weren't forced into a position of having to support our garbage ordinance at that moment. You see where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure why this is pushing us into that corner to make a decision to support you on that.
Well, I also had another gentleman that was on medical-like duty, and I used him a lot to go around and pick up corrugated from the residents and deliver that to the recycle center. Mm-hmm. So that kind of helped there. But when you don't have that availability there, you do get hurt on your manning. What I would like to see the council do is to go ahead and purchase the new truck and allow us to make some additional cuts in our manning or some opportunities there. You know, when I first came on board with the city, you was running in red, and you asked me to change that. And we did take a look and made some changes there, and I think did a tremendous job. In 2006 and 2007, we had a total of 34 people in that particular department between public works and sanitation. Currently, right now, you got 29. And you looked at a growth of over 2,000 additional homes that have hit this area that we had to still pick up without adding any bodies. I did not come to the mayor, neither mayor, and say, well, let me have some more people because the population is still growing. You can see this trend here where the population is continuing to grow. But we were able to make improvements, without doing that. But what the sanitation department, I think, is seeing is an effort to perhaps privatize us, and what that's gonna do is it's not gonna give us that option that if you do get in trouble, you won't have anything to dip into. Right now, you can dip into sanitation and pull out $450,000 and transfer it here or there, but you're gonna lose that option. That's what I'm seeing. This is my opinion.
The only
That's not a fair
thing,
statement.
the only reason we're dipping, and that's a bad choice of words, but going into the sanitation fund now is to pay back the general fund for the purchase of the Kirby's way back when. General fund is still owed somewhere around $500,000, and that's the reason we're doing it. Now, we're not gonna, it would be illegal for us to go in
Yeah.
and start transferring money out of sanitation
And
just to pay
Space
for
and I
operating.
talked about that.
Yeah. I mean, we're putting the capital, the capital cost, what it costs the general fund to purchase the Kirby's into capital improvements, namely the ladder truck.
Yeah. And the other thing I don't think you looked at either, you want to hold up on purchasing the new truck. Public Works and Sanitation has been perhaps naive by not coming to you like the chief saying, I need vehicles. I have vehicles here that's 23 years old, 19 years old, 12 years old. You have called me and said there's debris out on the street that a resident has called you about, that I got vehicles that's dropping it, and
Yeah,
we've had to
but
correct
Terry,
that.
that's the difference in a $75 tailgate seal. That has no effect on the year of the truck.
Well,
with
what
all
I'm saying
due
is these trucks
respect.
is going down, Brad.
I understand.
They're going down,
Without question.
and they're gonna continue to leak debris on the streets.
But
We have to
that
continue to
has
do-
nothing to do with the age of the truck, though, Terry. I think that's a misleading statement. That's a tailgate seal issue. That's not because we're running 20-year-old trucks on the streets.
Now, that was the steel bottom of the
Mm-hmm.
floor that was just ate out and rotten out. We fixed some of those, tried to.
Well, Terry, I would rather not even order those older trucks that you're using and stay with the one man. That's what we're wanting to get onto anyway, so. One man on a truck to kind of pick the Herbies up by himself. I don't think we should be ordering unless it gets down to the bare necessities where we're out of the older trucks and we can't get in the neighborhoods. But I'm like David, we need to, I don't know, it's cut out of the budget this time, right? The one-man truck,
For now,
for now. Yeah,
proposed.
yeah.
If proposed, I'm just thinking that you should reconsider and, and continue to make progress as you've done. You do have a department that believes in the leadership and asks for the leadership support, but, don't treat that department like it don't exist in the city. Don't do that.
Well, we've talked about for 5 years in here, and I've talked about it, my family complies with it. I'd like for my neighbors to comply with it, to help us with our sanitation, if we're gonna stay in the sanitation business, and to improve recycling. That's just responsible Mother Earth consideration, common sense. And, maybe we need another truck, not this year. Let's continue to work on the education component, as you've talked about, with the community and their compliance with us, so that we don't have that additional manpower, workers' comp, and additional expense, where people can just put out whatever they want. And they can do that in other cities where they have private, or out in the county where they have private haulers. But in the city, we're maintaining staff, we're maintaining fleets. So we have some expectations in when the Herbie program started, with the one-man automated truck, and with the intent to recycle. I think that's part of this is part of long-term thinking. And I think the best part of what we've done in the last 2 weeks on council is the fact that we've made a shift from more immediate concerns within council to long-term plans, what we want to do and what we can accomplish that's best for the city. So it may hurt this year, but it's gonna improve for the future. So that's my thought.
You had the worst looking fleet, you know, within a 50-mile radius here in the city here. And these guys are busting chops to really try to keep the city looking good. And I understand what you're saying. I understand business a little bit too, but I don't understand the logic behind this particular one here, because you're gonna spend some major bucks this year here. And you know, when you cut the other accounts, I don't mind that, because if you have a bad winter, you're gonna give me some salt. I'm not worried about that. You know, if you don't, the citizens will make it good. But when you come to vehicles and picking up the garbage, we need to continue to do a good job out there. And you can't do it with these type of vehicles out there. You're gonna see your vehicle maintenance account go up quite a bit this year. It's gonna run overboard. You may look in there and see it now, but we've been doing a good job trying to maintain it. But we're to the point now, it's gonna hurt us. Even your salt trucks and your public works department, look at this particular vehicle there. This whole bed is ate out, it's rotting out. You'll have to get sheets of steel or put a new bed on the particular truck. If you come out there and visit with us, and you will see these things. You know, stop the guys out here while they're picking up trash. Talk to them, you will see these things. Let them know you support them. Not just when you're looking for their votes, but now. You need them, you support them now.
Thank you, Terry.
Mayor, I've got a question if I could. I wasn't here last week, unfortunately. I'm sitting here trying to listen to the logic behind some of the things that we're asking for and doing. And one of the first things that comes to my mind is that, you know, 3 years ago, when I first came in on council, we were talking about the one-man garbage trucks. I mean, at what point do we stop? Or do we just stop and say, you know, we're talking about educating the general public about the need to go to the one-man truck, not the need to get everything inside the Herbie, I guess, is what we're trying to get the public to do. But at what point do we stop and say, you know what, it's been 3 years. How many more years do we give the public? At some point, we have to make a decision. Are we going to enforce the one-man garbage trucks or not? And if we are, then let's go ahead and go to the one-man garbage trucks. If we're looking for ultimate efficiencies within that department, we should be encouraging trying to go to the one-man truck. And then the second part is, you know, we got a police department that's asked for 10 cruisers, which apparently they're still in the budget. We've got a fire department that's asked for a new ladder truck, which obviously is still in the budget. How do we say one department's more important than the other department? When what Terry does, as you stated several months ago, if that garbage doesn't get picked up, who gets that first telephone call? You do. So I guess I'm confused. And I mean, again, we all have different priorities here. I understand that. I can respect that. But, you know, at what point do we stop and say we're going to the one-man truck? And then the second part of that is how can we say when he's got a fleet, I mean, he was just given the age of his fleet. I mean, he's going to have maintenance costs. That's the same thing we're looking at in the fire department. You know, where they need a new ladder truck because of the maintenance cost and the fact that it's falling apart.
Well, David made the suggestion a while ago, and I think Andrew said you could take a straw vote, see if we can put the garbage truck back in. Is that what you're hinting towards, David?
I don't know, maybe the whole thing in general. I do have a few more questions, and Terry, I appreciate what you said and where you are with everything, and I suspect that if all this proceeds tonight, you know, later in the year, you know, if there's needs, I mean, normally from what I've seen in the past, the councils have been pretty understanding and receptive to making changes when justified and when needed. And I say that about a lot of things. And we go through this budget process, and like I said before, it's never a perfect budget. Not all of us are in favor of everything within it. The mayor's not, and certainly we're not. So I guess I would say to you, and certainly your departments, we appreciate you. Keep up the great work. And, later in the year, if this does go through and there's something we can do to help, I'm sure that we'll do what we can.
I guess, in reference to Mr. Showalter's point, to me, it's a question right now of kind of the deep-seated practice of the citizens. Doesn't really support a one-man truck at this point. Other problem is that the ordinance needs to be fixed in order to get us to the point of a one-man truck. We've bought a truck in the budget 2 years ago. We bought a new garbage truck in this year's budget. And it just didn't seem to be wise when Terry came before council and said, you guys have to fix the ordinance and the practice of the citizens to try to get them to the point where they're putting everything in the Kirby so that we can get to the one-man truck, to go out and purchase a one-man truck, not knowing if we're going to pass the ordinance, not knowing necessarily if we're going to fix the practice. To me, I want to get it to everything's in the Kirby and we run a one-man truck. That's what I want to get to. But until we can fix the practice in the ordinance, I just can't justify putting it in the budget until I'm sure that we're going to pass the ordinance down the line.
Then
Does that make
wouldn't it
sense?
be logical to say that we need to work on that ordinance then?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And either get it done, or one way or the other,
Absolutely.
do something?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But not put the cart before the horse.
No, but I mean, we've been talking about that for several years now.
Yes, we have.
Well, yeah.
We have.
Well, Terry addressed that ordinance the other night, and I think Andrew, have you already started looking at it, or?
No, but I will.
Okay.
And I mean, we have some good ideas as far as what needs to be fixed.
Okay.
And I agree with Mark. Even though the ordinance currently says, thou shalt not leave your trash outside.
Me or him.
They shall anyway.
Sorry. There's no real way to enforce that effectively. So until you get that, you're still going to get the people leaving their trash outside, and us, the mayor getting 100 phone calls, my trash didn't get picked up. So, I mean, we'll need some real teeth in there before that can be a reality.
I feel like with the cuts that are being made with sanitation, that we're kind of setting the tone for that. And based on my conversation with Terry, I mean, to him it was pretty clear that if this budget passes the way it's proposed, then we're almost going to be forced into that position. And, Terry wants efficiencies. I want efficiencies. We all want efficiencies. And I guess kind of continuing the question at the second reading that we had, one of the concerns were the number of employees that were being eliminated, and obviously 2 positions in sanitation are not being filled, right, according to this. And I know Karen specifically that night had concerns with the positions, and I know she wasn't sure exactly which ones, but what other positions are being held out from this budget other than these 2?
I think that I don't know if you've got a copy of what I emailed out Friday in front of you, but
I've got this.
if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from the conversation Wednesday was obviously the 2 sanitation positions were being unfunded, I think with a request to bring a personnel ordinance back relatively soon to abolish them. The other change, there was other discussion, but the only other position that became unfunded was the part-time seasonal safety officer,
Right.
which is the position that does parking tickets and such. That position was unfunded with let's continue the conversation about how those duties can be addressed.
Were those the only 2? I mean, I thought you had like more concerns in terms of.
Those were the only
specific-
ones action was taken on.
I did, but then the others can be rode up into the vacancy rate reduction, because that was 4, then we agreed the other night to do it at 3%. So the others can probably be savings of 300,000 into that.
Okay, I'm certainly not picking on the fire department, but what about the 2 positions that we talked about with the fire department? Are those just going to be held off for a certain number of months, or what was the plan?
Pending an approved second reading of the budget, the chief and I, of course, are going to address. Because we had already done a 4-month
we got state testing we got
on
to do.
those, so.
The next one comes up this week, but we're not gonna meet that one. So the next one will be September 30th before it starts.
So 3 months then, essentially, is that?
No, it'll be more than that. It
About
starts
six-
September 30th,
about
it
six-
ends in November.
Okay.
It'll be about
It'll
6
be
months,
6
yeah.
months.
It's about 6 months. So you really eliminate one position, two 6 month period for one person. In a savings, what
We'll
I'm
be
saying.
halfway into the
Saving
new
money
budget.
on one
Right, that's what I'm saying, not eliminate, but saving the funds on one position.
Will they be filled, will they be drawing a paycheck within the fiscal year, those two positions?
You listen to
what you
do, and I'll see
Be in the second half.
Second half, okay.
Chief, I did have the chance to go out and meet with some of your guys at the fire station, look at the ladder truck, and it was in bad shape. I mean, I'm certainly not an authority or an expert, but, you know, I appreciated the opportunity that they gave several of us on council to come out and do that. And I know it takes a while to get one in. It could take, how many months? Up to,
It'll be lucky to be in this fiscal year. This
yeah,
fiscal year.
yeah. Could
But I
take
don't know,
a year, right? I mean,
13, 14,
it might be in the next budget by the time it all,
the live will be.
you know, is said and done.
But we gotta get started.
Right,
You just can't go to the lot and pick one up,
yeah. I understand.
unfortunately.
So, so the vacancy rate took care of the positions, I guess, that you were most concerned with?
Right.
Okay. I guess the next question, I guess, that I would have related to the community services, and I know some pretty dramatic cuts were made.
David, before you go on, can I go back, because you've jumped from sanitation to vacancy to fire, and I want to go back to what you mentioned, because the language you used was exceptional. You talked about if we do this in sanitation, it would force us to do some move with the ordinance, with the education piece, with giving the city hall the backing. I think that's exactly what we have to do. I mean, if we don't, then, okay, let's just buy another truck and talk about it for another 2 years. I mean, force us, that's exactly what you said. That would be, that's where, I mean, that's what I want to be a part of. I don't want to be a part of, let's just buy another truck and then wait for that. So, we got to give Terry's guys the support, we got to give City Hall the support. We need, you know, the efficiencies. In 06, 07, he had 34 people. Community has grown by 30% since then. We're down to 29 people. So obviously you and your leadership has worked. The efficiencies have improved. We've made some strides, but we still don't have enough in that area to make the difference. So, I mean, are we going to force ourselves to work a little harder to improve the legislation that we have to improve our services? Or are we just going to talk about it? And that's my
Let me ask you a question. Do you have a goal where you would like to see sanitation as far as efficiency, as far as manning?
Say it again.
Do you have a goal where you would like to see us? Like you right, we've came down a lot from 34 to 29 with the population still growing. Where would you like to see us?
I have not done enough research. I don't have the details.
All right.
And what I'm speaking from specifically is what I know I don't understand. I don't know how many miles of streets cannot use a one-man truck. I don't know how many miles of streets can. I don't know what the breakdown would be of what we do have to use a traditional sanitation truck and an automated truck. I don't know what that percentage is to what the goal is in mind. But, you know, the Kirby's, we bought those before I got on council, and this is my 5th year. And this is the intent to make some improvements. The improvements are there, but again, we're not getting full citizen participation
You're right.
as I would like. I'm in education. Education takes a while. You can't, like Mark said, Showalter said, you know, at what point can we just say, this is it, and we go for it? We can't just pick a date out there without continued implementation and understanding from the public, because the 100 phone calls that the mayor gets. Why'd you even pick my garbage up? Well, here's why we didn't, and here's why we won't.
Okay.
Or here's why we will, here's how we will, and here's what it costs.
Thank you. My question was for Andrew and Mark. As far as the ordinance goes and getting some teeth in it, how long do you think that would take?
I can get it ready the July 8th meeting if we need
Yeah.
it.
So what I'm saying is, the chief and I are really in the same predicament. We don't go through a car lot and pick out a truck. It's gonna take you 9 months plus to get that truck in here. just like it did the last time. So if everybody would commit to really get it on this thing, come to some meetings and commit to that, we can have this done in no time. So,
That's fine with me. I mean, as far as working and trying to get it
so if,
accomplished.
Get it done
if
first.
if that's what's holding you up from wanting to get a truck in is having some teeth in the organism, you can have that done before the truck even really get on the assembly line. You're looking at a 9 to 10 month window before you even see that truck.
Well, I would rather get our work done first, and while we're waiting, instead of ordering a truck now, for example, if we want to use the truck as the example, there's a lot of things that we're waiting to see how they're going to turn out, whether we're going to have a new interstate interchange, whether we're going to have a construction, whether they're going to have a jump in home sales, whether the interest rates going up are going to make a difference on home purchases. I mean, there are things that are happening that we've talked about the predictions of positive economic development and economic growth in the community, and we can't spend that money till we know what it is. So I would rather wait, and as that comes in, if this is cut now, that's a top priority for later. When those things.
So it really not the ordinance then, so it's that, you want to really wait on that.
I want to wait on that, but I want to do the other. Like David said, it'll force us into doing the legislation. If that makes sense.
Anything else?
Mayor, just kind of continue
Sure,
with what I
absolutely,
was
David.
asking about as it relates to the community services. Obviously, there were some pretty sizable cuts that were made there. And I know that those adjustments didn't take place in the meetings that Connie and Brad and Mark had. And the last time we made cuts that were, I guess you might say, unilateral like this, there was a little bit of backlash. There were some issues with the fiscal court. And I guess it's not so much my concern that we're making the cuts, it's how we're making the cuts. I feel like that, if we're going to work together with the many things that we do work with the fiscal court on, that we need to be sitting down at the table and having specific conversations. And I guess I would ask this question. If the fiscal court somewhere throughout the middle of this upcoming budget year say, well, we're going to make some cuts. We're going to cut building inspection, for example. How are we going to react to that? What are we going to do? What if they decide they're going to cut $20,000 from building inspection? They say, well, most of the building's taking place in the city. And this isn't my conversation with anybody on the fiscal court. I'm just asking you all the hypothetical. Because obviously the other night, this was something that you all felt was justifiable somehow. And I guess I want to ask the question, what do you do if the county decides to do the same thing to us?
I think we deal with it.
I don't think they'll do it.
Specifically.
Well, you mentioned in the middle of the year. I don't think they're going to do it in the middle of the year.
Well, anytime, hypothetically. Anytime.
Well, hypothetically, and I think we've bridged a gap here among ourselves that we can change the process of how we do the budget. We've talked about that. Their budget's due earlier. They do it earlier. I think that it forces us into actually cooperating with them earlier in February.
Kelly, can I ask you a question? I mean,
Yes.
you're a sharp guy. Do you not think sitting down at a table and communicating, let's put this in a little bit different perspective. Let's talk about Toyota, or we're dealing with, let's not use Toyota, let's just say Tahara Cho in the city of Georgetown.
Right.
I mean, don't you think that the best approach might be just to sit down and communicate and try to work something out?
Absolutely.
As opposed
Absolutely.
to
But
forcing an issue with somebody that you're trying to have a working relationship with?
Let me take this one, Kelly.
No, absolutely. Hang on, Brad.
I'm sorry.
Because he addressed me. I think that's absolutely right. But we as a council screwed up again this year and took too long doing this process. We, about 3 weeks ago, we all sort of agreed that we would go through the budget. We would go through the budget department by department. We took a 10-minute recess and we came back and everybody, I don't know, just forgot what our conversation was for 2 hours. And we voted to move on, and we left here not talking about the budget. So again, we sort of railroaded ourselves out of getting the budget done by June 30th. We goofed up our own process. The county does it earlier. By statute, they have to. We do it later. And we've taken too long to do it. And in the process of doing that, the good thing is, the political and personal differences that the majority of us have on council, we set those aside last week to work on some of this for the city's benefit. Did we disclude the county from the conversation? Yes, to a certain degree, because they weren't at the table for us, because it's already prepared. What we can do now, as a majority, is to recognize the fault in our process, and maybe this is my own personal belief of how we're doing this, and communicate with them earlier, not full council, full fiscal court, but a few at a time, a couple of council members, right? A couple of fiscal court members, a couple of magistrates, talk about a department, starting in February or March.
I
so that
thought
we
we
can do that.
decided just a little bit earlier that that would be the process we followed next year.
We did.
Well,
That's part of-
actually, Mayor,
For that.
we made that, what you're describing is exactly what we asked in our interlocal committee meetings. We asked that. That process, we've already gone down that road.
And what
We-
adjustments
Let
did
me-
you make?
We didn't.
We didn't, but we were never supplied with the information. We asked in our interlocal committee meetings to please get us that information early on, but long before their budgets have to be in. They agreed. We've not seen hide nor hair of any of their budgets. So to say that we've kind of brought this on at the last minute is a little bit of an unfair statement, because we did ask. That was one of the, and Connie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the things that we thought we came out of those meetings with, is that we're going to have the communication. They're going to bring us those, because we acknowledge that they have to do this at an earlier date than we do. To my knowledge, Mayor, we got nothing.
So we didn't get a budget from the county early on, much sooner than our budget? I mean,
Well, we got it in April, I think.
that
I
seems
will
fairly
say
early.
that-
Isn't that fairly early? I mean,
That's-
Honestly, I wasn't.
But that means they've already made it, and we didn't have a conversation prior.
So he had to have his in, am I correct, the 1st of May?
Right. And if we get it the third week of April, it gives us no input to that budget whatsoever. And that's one, and the key to that
I
is
see.
that everyone in
I
that
didn't
meeting.
realize you wanted to control the interlocals that,
No, I want to control the money that the taxpayers of the city of Georgetown pay the city of Georgetown.
okay?
Wouldn't it be better if we met with the county before their budget was due?
And the fact is,
Well, there
we
were
asked
13
for that
meetings
input,
that-
and we were not given that input,
There were
ever.
13 meetings that took place.
Mark,
I was
you have a
not on-
statement?
Yeah, I guess it'll come over from the year 2008, when I first served on the interlocal task force, way back. And I had a conversation with Connie a few days ago, and she was saying they should bring their numbers to us in February. Well, that's the exact same thing we were saying in the city back in '08, that we need to see the county's numbers as far as how they're gonna fund their own interlocal agencies, so that we would know how much of a hit it would be to our budget, be able to give some sort of insight, give some sort of advice. And we've done it, and they said, well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but it hasn't happened. In '08, '09, 2010, on up to now, it hasn't happened. And some of the cuts here, maybe there will be reprisals, I don't know, but it's our budget. They're a department head on animal control, on electrical inspection, on any of their interlocals, the same way that Rob Bruin and Mike Bossy are department heads. If we make cuts in the budget to them, they have every right to come to us and say that's too much of a cut, and argue and tell us why. Say we need more in their vehicle maintenance. We need more here, we need more there. They have every right. To say that the budget is set in stone when they give it to us in April and May, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it offends me, or it offends me as a city council member. It doesn't work because we don't have the money they have. And we've been forced to lay off 21 people in '08 to eliminate an entire city department. We've been forced to have employees who were laid off call Karen, and Karen calls me the same day, very upset about it. And of course, I've had employees call me and still call me, still wanting their jobs back. So that's where we're at. We don't have the luxury of having the money in the bank that they have. And that affects how they budget in the same way that it affects how we budget our own city departments. We just don't have it.
Mayor, several questions.
Mark.
First, as they were talking, several of the members on the other side of the aisle were talking about the interlocals. Are you going to be changing the makeup of the interlocal committee? Did we not discuss that several months ago?
Yes, yes, we will.
Okay, so that is going to be done?
That will be done.
Okay. Second thing is, and again, somebody correct me if my numbers are wrong here, but, I mean, obviously, the electrical inspection, it appears, the electrical inspection department appears are taking about a 10.5% cut?
It's a 5% reduction from their annualized expenditures, the exact same 5% that we ask of some of our own departments.
Okay, what about animal control then? What's the percentage that what percentage did you figure that was going to be?
Animal control was based off of a 20% reduction off of their annualized expenditures.
Okay, so basically, we've taken, I'll come back to that question. What is the ultimate intent with both of those departments? I mean, obviously, there's 5 of you that agreed at the last meeting that those cuts need to happen. What ultimately are you after with both of those departments? Is it the fact that we just want to do away with the city funding both of those departments? Is that?
No, not for me.
I don't think anyone was looking to do away with funding for the electrical inspection office.
At all.
And what about animal control?
Animal control, I think that's on the table.
Okay.
It was
so
in the
we're gonna-
newspaper that we were in 4 or 5 years, we're going to dissolve ourselves from the animal control. And I think that, hopefully that was a misprint.
Well, let's speak for ourselves.
So if we're
It's
I'm
thinking,
speaking for myself.
No,
I said,
but instead of the
hopefully that
news.
was
I mean, I
a
guess-
misprint.
when the 5 of you met and decided that this was the route you were going to take and voted on it, how do you determine one department gets a 5% cut, one department gets a 20% cut, and then Parks and Rec, it appears, are going to take about 11% cut? I mean, how do you determine what numbers?
I don't think Parks and Rec received an 11% cut.
Based on this, if you look at the total, well, even if it's, I mean, how do you determine that? How did you determine what numbers you were going to come up with to make those cuts?
With animal control, the intent was, as it was printed in the paper, that we would look to see to release ourselves from that funding. We're not statutorily required to pay for animal control. We began that practice in a time when we could afford that. We began that practice in a time when money was not that big of an issue, and the percentage of our budget that was spent on that was not that big of an issue. As we come to a situation where, again, we're getting ready to hit a $2.5 million deficit, we have to look at everything. We're not statutorily required to provide animal control. I think several of us agreed that we should start on the process. Some of us wanted a more extensive cut to animal control. So kind of what we talked about was a 5-year plan. That way it's not excessive on anyone during any particular year to move away from that.
I guess if that's where ultimately some of you want to head, I mean, why prolong that? Why not just go ahead and make the motion and go ahead and say that the city's not going to support funding animal control?
To be cooperative with the county, I would say.
I mean, you say that on one hand, but on the other hand, as you answer David's question, I mean, there's not been that dialogue back and forth. So how can you cooperate on one hand, but on the other hand, you're not?
Mark, we dialogued a lot during those interlocal committee meetings. We all agreed on many things. Many things have not happened. We asked and were agreed upon quarterly reports from every interlocal department. In front of, we've never seen the first one. We asked for budgetary numbers long before our budget process began, long before they have to enact their budget. Never been. It's not a matter of not dialoguing with the county. It's a matter of the follow through with the county. That's what the issue is.
We're shifting all the blame back on the county.
No,
All
absolutely.
county's fault. Is that
Where's,
what-
I'm not seeing blame, period. Where's their blame, period?
Well,
You're asking a question about dialoguing, and I'm telling you that dialogue happened. It happened.
I just think we're going in so many different directions that ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't know where we're going. And, I mean, I agree. I think there's things that can be done better and more efficiently, but man, it's not the right word to use, I apologize. It's just a term, but there's just, it's all over the board. And I mean, you know, I just think I don't know what I think at this point. I mean,
Well,
you know, we ask our city department heads to make a 5% cut in their operating budgets, but then we go to our interlocals and then we're just,
it's not that all over the board. The electrical inspection was 5%. Museum was 5%, I believe.
Museum was what they asked for.
Museum was what they asked for. The animal shelter was 20% based off of a 5-year step out from that. Parks and Rec was their current fiscal budget plus the 3% raises for full and part-time employees. So it was, I mean, it's less, it's 15% less than their request, but it was the same as the current fiscal budget plus the raises, so that wasn't 5%.
I guess the only other question I have is, obviously there's some pretty significant cuts in Parks and Rec. There's obviously cuts in animal control, electrical inspection, and also planning and zoning. Have any of the 5 of you talked to any of those department heads to see what impact that those cuts would have on those departments? And I'll give you one example. If we cut her budget by over $100,000, the county's either A, going to pick up our shortfall, or B, they're going to cut by the same amount we are. And if they do cut by the same amount that we're going to cut, what impact does that have on our department?
I think we should be careful when we use the term cut, okay? They didn't receive a cut in their budget. They received a decrease from what they requested. That's not a cut. Okay, we in fact gave them $40,000 more to accommodate for their wage increases than they had this current year. So I think you can't represent it as a cut, and that's kind of what we talked about earlier in this budget process. When we have varying degrees of increases requested, you can't go across the board and say that's a cut, this is a cut, without basing them off the current year's budget.
Okay, let me rephrase it a different way then. Has anybody talked to any of those department heads to see what impact that would have on their budgets, in their departments? Not necessarily their budgets, but their departments.
I think if we're not truly cutting their budget, we assume that they will operate under the same auspice that they did this year.
So does that mean nobody has talked to any of those department heads? Is that a correct assumption?
Recently, specifically about these cuts, no. I'll be the first one to tell you that.
Cuts.
Well, when in Rome.
Yeah. But I have not talked with Jerry, but over the last 5 years, Pavilion, Parks and Rec, and Youth Center have been 3 different accounts, as we know, and now it's going to be combined. Over the last 5 years, those 3 combined figures are $672,000, $672,000, $604,000, $624,000, and now $664 proposed from what we did.
So
Their request was $773,000. See the difference?
I do, and I don't want to bring Jerry up and put her on the spot, but I mean, obviously, she presented a budget based
No.
on what she and her department thought
Right.
that their needs were.
Right.
Not just for people that live in the city, but also people that live in the county. She presented that budget based on that. And now we're going to go back and make adjustments in her budget, but do we know what impact that's going to have on her department? Whether it's capital improvements, personnel, equipment, do we know that?
She was in front of us
Yeah.
one night. I don't believe you were here, but she was in front of us one night, and we discussed it.
what the impact would be.
Well, at that point, there was no number other than what she
And
had
again,
requested.
the only thing I think we need to do is I think we need to really make it clear what the impact's going to be. Because ultimately, it could affect anybody if adjustments are made in that budget.
I could only imagine that a $40,000 increase from their current year's budget could not yield a negative impact on the department.
What now? I'm sorry.
I said, I can't imagine increasing the budget by $40,000 would yield a negative impact on the department. Considering in that one specifically, we haven't had them in the center of town for an entire year.
But you don't know that for a fact. That's an assumption.
No, I'm know for a fact that we've not been in that building for a year.
I'm talking about.
And
that
Suffaletta was closed
$40,000.
last year. There was no revenue off Suffaletta last year, was there?
Again, I don't disagree that there's things that we need to make adjustments. I just wish.
Well, we sat in here for 2 months, as Mr. Varney said, Mayor Varney said, and few proposals were ever made. I think we made 2 or 3 one night, and then we decided to just sign off on the budget. So, if there was a better way in your mind, we had an opportunity to go over that. We had an opportunity to go over that, so.
What happened, who's gonna pick up if we get out of the animal control, who's gonna pick up the dogs and the chickens and the pigs?
I would.
Well, the KRS statute
Would like to
requires
address that.
I'd like to hear Brad first,
Okay, sure.
the local authority.
I would defer to legal counsel then.
I'd really like to hear your answer.
It's a statutorily required office for the county government. The cities can participate, but statutorily, that's a county office. Now, I'm not sure on the specific ordinances or how. I mean, I guess we're still specifically under a dog licensing act that we've never had enforced. So I think there's an argument to be made there, but we're voluntarily participating with this office, with this department. We're not required to have an animal shelter. We're required to have animal control. Many counties don't have an animal shelter.
Is the county required to pick up the animals in the city or just provide the facility?
What facility? You don't need a facility for animal control.
You don't?
You need a facility for an animal shelter.
Okay.
Andrew?
Well, let's hear Andrew's.
Well, when I saw the article in the paper this morning, it got me thinking, because I don't remember that happening. But I did some research, and it's true. You have to be very careful in how you say what it is that is a result of defunding the animal control. Let's just assume that happened. It's true when you say the county is responsible for animal control. It's responsible for fulfilling Chapter 258 animal control, which it can be boiled down to no dogs running at large, dogs that have bit people get impounded, and no dogs without tags or with rabies. That is the extent of what the dog warden, the former dog warden, the current animal control officer, is required to do by state law.
Does that also covers, I guess, mistreated animals?
It does not.
Does not?
It does not. The city has multiple ordinances related to animals, such as the recently amended pigs and chickens ordinance, and that makes, I think, 9 in a row, by the way, that's come up.
Every meeting.
Every single meeting. There are ordinances related to noisy dogs, to dogs that chase cars, to dogs that bite other animals or harass people, or there are ordinances related to keeping of pet stores and livestock, selling of livestock. There's a multitude of city ordinances governing proper care and upkeep and nuisance related to animals. The county is not responsible, absent an interlocal agreement, to care for any of that. In fact, they're specifically prohibited from enforcing any of that without an interlocal agreement in place. So, it's true to say that it is a county responsibility for animal control, but it is at the same time true to say that the city has given itself multiple municipal duties, and it can only take care of those if it does it itself or if it contracts with someone else. It's given authority by state law to contract with the, quote, county animal control officer, which it has chosen to do through an interlocal agreement. So, bottom line, if the county were to totally defund, or I'm sorry, the city were to totally defund county animal control and to split them off, the city would either have to dump all of its ordinances related to animals or to pay to have those enforced through its own means.
Like through a code enforcement officer?
Correct.
That's right.
It's been, I saw a list of the runs, animal control runs. It was during this last interlocal task force. And it seemed like most of them were about dogs running loose, crossing property lines. And that would seem to be a violation of state law rather than.
It is. Dogs at large is a state law issue.
The leash law is more like a guy walking down the street and expecting his dog to follow along behind him. I think that's where the
That's the
leash
city
ordinance.
law.
Yeah, that's the. But if you got a dog running loose, and it seems like I call animal control. Twice a month, dogs running loose on the north end. That is a state law issue as far as running loose.
Mayor, I've probably.
Dave, you have any other? Go ahead.
I've probably said enough, and it's probably a moot point. But it's not so much the cuts. I mean, quite honestly, I'm pretty conservative by nature, and some of what's in here is probably pretty good. It's how we're handling it, Mayor, is the issue that I have. And, I guess sometimes it can come down to a matter of opinion. But I think a little diplomacy and sitting down with the other parties and communicating is the best approach. And you might say, well, we've tried to do this, we've tried to do that, we've asked for quarterly reports. Well, have we given any quarterly reports? I suspect not. But anyway, I just think that a different approach would be better.
I tried to go to their meeting on Thursday night, to a county meeting. But they only unlocked one set of doors, and the band was playing in front of that set of doors, and I didn't want to walk through the band in the middle of the performance, so I wasn't able to get to their open meeting.
Any other comments?
So what's, we've been cutting this budget up. The ladder truck's in the budget, is that correct, Stacy? And that's paid for with cash, is that correct? How about the cruisers, the 10 cruisers, are they paid for?
They're in the budget ordinance that Tracy read.
And they're also paid for with cash, is that right?
That's correct.
That's correct. The other
And they're-
17 that we purchased it within this 12 and 13 will stay financed.
We'll say finance,
Yeah.
but they'll be paid for with the anticipated 1.5 million, 1.3 million net profits check in July.
17 cruisers.
Yeah.
Currently, we have them in there as finance. We had discussed, of course, we will bring an amendment to you when that check has arrived to.
And that'll pay for those 17.
That can be an option, as well as we've also discussed the police cruiser that is, or I'm sorry, police cruiser, the fire truck that's already ordered that will be delivered later this month or next month, being paid with
So we'll
cash.
pay for ladder truck, cruisers, fire engine. We'll also be able to give the employees a 3% raise, is that correct?
That was in
Correct.
here.
And maintain the same benefits package, is that right?
Mhm.
No change to the benefits package.
That's correct.
And also, there'll be some set aside toward the construction of the police station.
There will be a balance on the check, and obviously, like I said, we'll bring an amendment to you all with,
And the construction documents, the 176
that
for the construction.
is still in the budget.
are
175,000 for the construction documents is still in the budget.
So, and finally,
I'm
The
sorry?
budget, and finally, the budget with all those things is balanced, is that correct? I mean, between.
Balanced, yes.
Between estimated revenues and estimated expenditures.
If you recall the email I sent Friday, we did use some prior year revenues to balance.
Okay.
Because of the police cruisers, by leaving them all in there. As I had a chance to discuss with Brad, and I think you happened to stop by my office and mention when we said the 1.6, that did include all funds, not just general fund. So if this first and second reading are passed, when we come back with an amendment in July, that would eliminate the need to use hopefully the prior year revenues.
And we're able to do all that with no new debt.
This budget has no new debt.
No new debt.
And no tax increase.
No tax.
And then there's some being put back in fund balance?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that like 800,000?
Well,
Should be around
that will be with the amendment coming in July, and we'll have to decide, is it going in reserves or is it going to capital project?
Yeah, toward the police.
Yeah, because we.
There have been two different conversations on how to use the
Okay.
balance of that money.
Well, I think we even talked in last Wednesday's meeting about trying to set up a capital improvement fund for the police department in order to try to get to a 20% balance in order to pay for that as well, so.
It's really funny what Mark just said. I had written down on this little piece, as we were all discussing things, wrote it down on a piece of paper here, and say the things that the budget accomplished was raises benefits, new police cars paid with cash, new fire trucks paid with cash, a start for the police station, and preparing for the 2015. Those were, now, maybe it's awkward, maybe the way we're getting there, but those were the most important things that I think everybody at this table, all of us, can agree on. And if the budget passes tomorrow, then we've been able to achieve those. Is it a little awkward? Yes. Is it going to be a little hard on some other departments? Yes. But if we don't achieve this the way we've done it and get these other things that I just mentioned, come 2015, it's going to be a whole lot harder on all of the departments and everybody. So we have to do, you know, it's not a perfect world and everybody doesn't get everything they want every year, but overall it's a good budget. It's going to be tight on a few people to do things, but it can be done. And sometimes, sorry to say, when you tighten up, it does force you to look at things differently than what you're accustomed to, and sometimes you come up with things that are even better than what you're used to doing. So, and I think after the budget passes, if it passes, then we'll sit down at the table with the county, and then we've got something we have to start talking about. It's not put it off, because we do that. We did that ever since I've been on council way back. We put things off and put it off. So now we won't put it off, we'll have to. So,
Well, we've always said if the departments have some issues and are short, it never hurts to come back to this council, and I'd be willing to listen to any department, and on the other side of the street too, if they have an issue with that, bring it to us, because I don't know how revenues are going to be. Hopefully they continue strong like they were, but for all y'all departments and interlocals, if you have an issue with it, bring it to the council, and I'm willing to listen to you. And the reason I'm saying that is because two things in that budget I pushed for. That was the fire truck and the police department. So I'm swaying,
and they're still there.
and they're still there. They weren't, but they are.
Any other comments, council?
Motion to adjourn?
One more thing, Mayor. We would not have been here without you starting the budget process. I know in the paper, and I've heard some scuttlebutt here and there, that, you know, the council's taken the budget away from the mayor. That's, all these are just some minor really not minor changes, but changes. But the skeleton and the entire framework of the budget, your administration, you, Stacy, and the rest of the department heads put together, we couldn't have done it without you. Absolutely not.
But we had to have a starting point.
Well, you got us 99% of the way there.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Motion that we adjourn?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly, and second by Mr. Moore. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? See you at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening for the second reading and the vote.
Have you seen them? What's that thing?
It's a tone dialer. That's how I used to do hacking back when I was like 11 years old and steal free long distance, because you put it in your phone and it makes the phone, and you can get all these dial internationally and bypass the phone company if you have one of these. I was like, wow, legitimate use for these. That's incredible.